Imagine a world where the flow of money, every penny, every dollar, every yen is controlled not by the governments but by private institutions shrouded in secrecy. What if I told you that behind the glittering facade of modern economies lies the tangled web of elite families, secret societies, and central banks? Sounds like a conspiracy, doesn't it? Well, let's dive into the rabbit hole and uncover the history of central banks and the alleged ties to the shadowy hands that may control the world. Oh, and if you thought your HOA was shady, wait until you hear this. Our story begins in the Renaissance Italy. The Medici family, one of Europe's wealthiest and most powerful, pioneered modern banking practices. They didn't just fund art and architecture, they funded monarchs, armies, and even the papacy itself. Their influence is so vast, some whispered they were more powerful than kings. As patrons of innovation, they introduced lots of different things, double entry bookkeeping and other revolutionary methods that became the backbone of modern finance. But where the Medicis were just savvy businessmen who seized opportunity, or were they early agents of a hidden financial cabal, setting the stage for a world where money and power intertwine in ways few can see? Fast forward to 1694, England's finances were in shambles. After a year of war, enter the Bank of England, the first central bank as we know it. Behind its creation were William III of England and a consortium of private financiers led by Scotsman William Paterson. Paterson famously declared the bank hath benefit of interest on all monies which it creates out of nothing. The bank stabilised the economy by creating a mechanism for managing public debt, but it came at a cost. Whispers began to circulate about how this new institution granted immense power to its private stakeholders. These financiers, some connected to influential banking families and the aristocracy, effectively controlled the flow of money in England. Why did its policies so often favour the elites over the common man? And was this the beginning of a financial system designed to serve a select few? Was this the moment when the world's financial system was subtly handed over to private interests? You can't talk about banking without mentioning the Rothschilds. By the 19th century, this family had become synonymous with wealth, power and conspiracy. Mayor Amschel Rothschild, a modest money changer in Frankfurt, built an empire by strategically placing his 5 sons in key financial capitals: London, Paris, Frankfurt, Vienna and Naples. The family's rise began through mayors' clever alliances with royalty and aristocracy, providing loans and managing financial affairs for the Landgrave of Hesse during the late 18th century. This relationship allowed the Rothschild to amass significant wealth, particularly during the Napoleonic Wars, when they used their network to transfer funds and provide financing to both warring sides. This ingenious strategy allowed them to create a tightly knit financial network that spanned Europe, offering loans to kings, financial wars, and even influencing the outcomes of major conflicts like the Napoleonic Wars. Some historians argue that their dominance reshaped the European banking system, solidifying private financial control over public funds and laying the groundwork for modern central banking. Their influence grew so immense that Nathan Rothschild once allegedly boasted, "I care not who controls a nation's laws as long as I control its money." But was this the empire built on mere financial genius, or were the Rothschild part of a grander design? Theories abound trying them to groups like the Freemasons, the Illuminati, and yes, even the Jesuits. Coincidence or something more? Now, let's cross the Atlantic to 1913 when the US birthed its own central bank, the Federal Reserve. Unlike the name suggests, it's not truly federal, nor does it hold much reserve. So what is it? The Federal Reserve Act was drafted in secrecy on Jekyll Island, Georgia. Why the secrecy? Attendees included powerful bankers like J.P. Morgan and Paul Warburg, who represented, drumroll please, the Rothschilds. But this wasn't the first time central banking was introduced in the US. In 1791, Alexander Hamilton spearheaded the creation of the first bank of the US, designed to stabilize the fledgling nation's finances. However, its 20-year charter expired amidst debate over federal versus state control of banking. Then came the Second Bank of the US in 1816, but it too faced fierce opposition, particularly from President Andrew Jackson, who saw it as a tool for the elite. Jackson's veto and subsequent bank war marked a hiatus in central banking until the financial panics of the late 19th century reignited calls for reform. Culmination in the Federal Reserve creation in 1913 was the Fed's inception, the answer to chaos or the beginning of a carefully orchestrated monopoly over the US economy. Imagine a smoke-filled room where the wealthiest men in America decide the fate of the economy. Feels very House of Cards, doesn't it? Over the next decades, the Fed's policies often seemed to favor Wall Street over Main Street. Was it incompetent, or was it by design? Fast forward to 1998, Europe establishes the European Central Bank. Like its predecessors, the ECB was designed to stabilize economies, but skeptics argue that it consolidates power in ways that serve the elite more than the citizens. Behind its creation were the Maastricht Treaty and key figures such as Wim Duesenberg, often referred to as the father of the euro, and influential policymakers from Germany and France. However, some whispered that its architects were subtly guided by the financial elites of the time, including the Rothschild family, ensuring that the ECB's policies aligned with the broader globalist goals and further entrenched the influence of private banking dynasties over Europe's financial systems. And then there's globalization. Central banks worldwide appear to be synchronized in their policies. They lower interest rates in unison, implement quantitative easing simultaneously, and even respond to global crises with eerily similar strategies. Is this economic cooperation born of necessity or a coordinated effort by secretive groups to ensure a tight grip on global financial power? Could this be the new world order we've been warned about? No exploration of secret societies would be complete without mentioning the Jesuits and Freemasons. Some believe the Jesuits, founded in 1540, are more than a religious order. They're financial puppeteers, pulling the strings from the Vatican to Wall Street. Meanwhile, the Freemasons, with their symbols and rituals, are often accused of being a shadow government. Many prominent bankers and politicians were Freemasons. Figures like Benjamin Franklin, George Washington, and even Winston Churchill were known members. Furthermore, influential industrialists such as Henry Ford and J.P. Morgan has ties to Masonic lodges. Coincidence? Or do they really hold their meetings in dimly lit basements with secret handshakes? While evidence remains circumstantial, the overlap between banking elites and these groups is intriguing. Today, central banks are more powerful than ever. They control interest rates, influence inflation, and even issue digital currencies. There are currently over 190 central banks worldwide, and interestingly, a significant number of them, approximately 75%, are privately owned or operate independently from direct government control. Many of these banks work under a framework introduced by organizations like the Bank for International Settlements and the International Monetary Fund. These entities often align with their policies in a way that raises eyebrows, with critics suggesting that a select group of elite families and secretive organizations pull the strings. Think Rothschilds, Rockefellers, and key players within the groups like the Jesuits and Freemasons. But how deep does their influence go? And are these synchronized moves part of a larger coordinated agenda? Take the World European Economic Forum's Great Reset Initiative. It is a benign plan for sustainability, or a blueprint for economic control by the elites. With over 75% of central banks operating independently or under private ownership, it's worth questioning who truly benefits from these sweeping economic shifts. And what about the rise of cryptocurrencies? Are there a way to liberate the masses, offering a financial freedom beyond the reach of traditional banks? Or are they just another tool, waiting to be co-opted by the powers that be, ensuring their grip on the global economy remains unchallenged? Are we witnessing the dawn of a financial revolution, or the final consolidation of power? To understand the global reach of central banks and their evolution, we must look beyond Europe and America. The International Monetary Fund and the Bank of International Settlements play key roles in shaping the financial systems of developing nations. Critics argue that these institutions wield the power through predatory loans, locking countries into cycles of debt and dependency. Take Africa, for instance. Many nations received massive loans under the guise of economic development, but these loans often came with strings attached: austerity measures, privatization of public resources, and loss of economic sovereignty. Countries like Ghana, Zambia, and Mozambique have struggled to break free from the financial grip. And it's not just Africa. Countries in Latin America and Southeast Asia have faced similar challenges, from Argentina's debt crisis to Sri Lanka's financial collapse. The IMF's so-called help often leaves nations more vulnerable than before. Is this economic aid or economic enslavement? Then there's the BIS, often called the Central Bank of Central Banks, with its headquarters in Basel, Switzerland. The BIS sets global monetary policy, often prioritizing the stability of the elite's financial system over the needs of ordinary citizens. Through these mechanisms, central banks and their global counterparts maintain control over the economies of nations large and small. Whether through interest rates, manipulation, or demands for fiscal austerity, their reach is virtually limitless. Are these institutions stabilizing the world, or ensuring it remains under their thumb? As we've seen, the history of central banks is as murky as it is fascinating. From the Medici to the IMF, from the Rothschild to the BIS, one thing is certainly clear: money is power. But how that power is wielded and at whose expense is a question that does demand answers. Are these institutions stabilizing global economies or orchestrating a system of perpetual debt and dependency? And as the influence of central banks stretch from the corridors of Europe to the struggling nations of Africa and beyond, we must ask, are we participants in the system or simply pawns in their grand design? What do you think? Are central banks the necessary backbone of modern economies, or are they the hidden hand controlling us all? Let us know in the comments below, and don't forget to like, share and subscribe to Veil of Time for more untold histories and intriguing conspiracies. Until next time, keep questioning, keep exploring and keep unveiling the truth.